Well, look at this. Look at this. Now, understand something, first and foremost. Neil Orfield is here. So I just want everybody to know that Neil's here because it's been over a year since I have done a live show, Neil, on the Stochastic DFS YouTube channel. So you're going to get a lot. I apologize ahead of time, but you're going to get a lot in the chat. Who the hell is this guy? Why is this guy here? Shut this idiot up. All of these things. Blame Laufey. He's the guy who went ahead and decided to have a second child, Neil. It wasn't me.
Not Eytan's
brother.
Has it? I cannot believe that it's been a year since you've been, which probably means that it's been a year since you and I have done a show together.
Yes.
Which is kind of insane to me that it's been that long. We have actually not done, what have we done? Probably 6 or 7 total shows together over the couple years I've been here. So we haven't done a ton of shows together, but always a treat when I get to do a show with Philadelphia local legend Eytan Shander. Always a good time.
Philadelphia local. You could have stopped there.
I don't know. People, everybody I know in Philadelphia tells me how much of a star you are in the Philly area. I mean, you're obviously a star nationwide as well, but especially in Philadelphia.
I'm going to send you this clip, right? They buttered my head. I have to put this in because my earpiece is falling out, so it's not cold in my studio by any means. So on TV the other day, I picked the score 21-17. Eagles beat the Chiefs. And instead of there being like confetti coming down or anything like that, they buttered me. Oh, we're going to butter you up. They buttered my head on television. So whoever's telling you that I'm a legend is far misrepresenting my career. You are a legend here on the DFS channel, my friend. So it's always a pleasure to break some bread with you.
Well, I'm at least here all the time, pretty frequently.
Yes, you're a staple. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
At Player Q DFS for Neil. At Shander Show for me. Jacob is here producing the show, making sure that we're running smooth and everything. We've got a very interesting slate to talk about the least, especially as Alan Lazard, the news comes down. But you've heard about this. We're going to keep telling you about this. I was talking to Neil about this ahead of time. The thing I love the most about whenever we have a sale or whenever we're selling something or whenever we're talking about something is that we're using this, right? This isn't like a burger commercial where Neil takes this big chunk out of a burger, smiles, and then cut and spits this thing out into a trash can. When we tell you about the NFL Sims, we're all using it. Now, I know I'm stuck on the Odd Shopper channel, but I'm using it because I don't have the time. Neil, as deep as he is, Greg, all of us were using it. It's Black Friday. You'll get 50% off brand new customers. You've been sitting probably for months. Yeah, at some point I'm going to, no. Get in now because you be signed up with the Millie promo. Don't worry. You'll be emailed a coupon that will allow you to renew your sub for 50% off your next payment. I cannot believe, Neil, how successful we have honed a tool like the Sims.
So like maybe it was not actually quickly because they were working on it behind the scenes for months, I don't know, years before I knew about it, but it felt quick to me from like when I learned that we were coming out with these contest level Sims. Then they're out like a month later and all of a sudden people are winning millies with it. Greg is crushing NBA ads. It's been really fun to see how quickly the tools have really changed the game for a lot of people.
Amazing. We'll tell you about this throughout. 50% off right now. Jump in. We'll continue to remind you because it's a Black Friday thing and we just want to fit in, right? What's your go-to what is your most memorable deal that you ever had? We all have one, right? Like my wife got a car that in the COVID, like a month into COVID, when everybody thought nobody was going to buy a car for the rest of eternity. So we're paying like $500 a month less than what people would be paying for it now because of the time and the deal she got. So you have to be holding it like some sort of trophy in your mind, this great deal that you once schemed.
Man, that's a really interesting question. And honestly, I don't know that I am. I bet if you give me a day, I could come up with something good, but off the top of my head, I mean, our house, we got it peak COVID. So we've got a good interest rate on our mortgage.
Beautiful.
I know that there's one that stands out. Yeah.
There you go. Okay. All right. Well, let's look at it, man. Let's dive into this here. We'll bounce around and talk about that. And you out there in the chat, I bring it up for Neil, but also for you as well. So I'm sure you have in your bag somewhere this deal of all deals that you've schemed that you're still bragging to your friends or in-laws, somebody about. So let's look at this overall. It's the Dolphins and Jets. Clearly, the Dolphins have slowed down a little bit based on where they were early in the year with the expectations they'd score 50 a night. You've got an interesting dynamic with the Jets where it's hard to believe that everybody outside of Zach Wilson is thrilled, right? Not thrilled. It wouldn't be hard to believe that everybody's thrilled right now that there's a new quarterback. So do you have any big picture expectations for this game before we start to look at the quarterbacks?
Yeah, I mean, so it's really interesting because it's Tim Boyle who's the quarterback who, like all of the NFL people who I follow closely, I honestly have not followed Tim Boyle's career very closely, but everybody is like, this is the one quarterback you could throw in there who's probably worse than Zach Wilson is a consistent thing I've been hearing from people who have been tracking, quarterback rating, that kind of stuff. So it's really interesting from that standpoint that like Tim Boyle is actually not likely to be an upgrade over Zach Wilson. I will say though, we've seen it happen many times where like a career, backup quarterback, a journeyman is known for being really bad. And then suddenly they can pop off as they become more mature. They've been in the NFL a long time. They can pop off for big games here and there. Guys like Geno Smith, who was kind of seemed like a bust for years. And then suddenly he's starting quarterback last year, played great for the Seahawks. I know he's come back to earth a little bit this year, but like we see it all the time with these veteran quarterbacks who have been bad for a really long time. Sometimes just being around the game for a long time, I think these guys can kind of like get used to the speed of play from the sidelines to an extent. So I'm at least hopeful that maybe Tim Boyle can be better in this game or going forward than he has been in the past, but that's maybe wishful thinking because he has not been good in his career.
Yeah, I think you're right, though, where you look at a guy like Boyle, and look, there are going to be degrees of it. Gardner Minshew on the extreme side of a guy who's probably more of a backup, but can still toe that line of a starter on weaker teams. It's all about the burst, right? Like this quick little burst you're going to get. Tim Boyle is not going to last as a starting quarterback, either upright or through decision-making. But in 1 week's time, with enough preparation, with a team that feels probably recharged right now, the fact that they don't have to hold their breath every time Zach Wilson drops back, think about this, man. This is a game that you have won a ton of money off. Any little edge that you have with these professional athletes going at it, because there's such a narrow gap between them. I'm almost, I'm not shocked to see this line move from 10.5 down to 9.5 and people keep betting the Jets. So that's the thing. Like the big picture of Tim Boyle is he sucks, but in a week's period of time right now, maybe he does surprise against the Dolphins.
Yeah, exactly. He can do it for one game. Don't have to, you're not betting on him to be a Hall of Famer by playing him in this single game slate. I think he's certainly viable in this slate. And it's, let me look at the tools, because this is, my best gauge for what his ownership is relative to his. We've got positive leverage on Tim Boyle, both in the captain spot and in the util spot. So not going to be a fun click, but we've got him at 5% captain ownership, 7% chance being optimal, 31% util ownership, 36% chance being optimal. So yeah, I'm going to be playing a lot of Tim Boyle today. I'm not going to watch the entire game. I might watch it anyway, but I'd be better off not watching it, I think, with Tim Boyle in my lineups, but I'll probably won't be able to help myself. I think I'm going to be playing, he's going to be in over half my lineups. I think I'm pretty confident in that. I'm not going to be playing, 95% like I would if you were Jalen Hurts or something, but I think I'm still going to have a good amount of Tim Boyle and just hope for the best there.
He's the captain in the highest rated lineup that I simmed ahead of the show here. He's popping up, as you mentioned, and it makes sense, especially because I would imagine leverage alone, there's probably just concern for people just to not trust a guy like that. Oh, Tua, everybody knows who Tua is. But yeah, absolutely. I'm with you on Boyle. It makes a lot of sense. We're not asking him to throw for 353 and 0 out there, nor will the Jets. I mean, look, if this guy throws 33 times, then the Jets deserve their fate at that point, which is not going to be good. Not going to be good at all.
Do you think there's any chance that like Trevor Siemian comes in mid-game today? I'm not really expecting it, but do you think that there's any chance that happens?
All right, let's look at that. It's a really, I think, interesting dynamic here, because we're not talking about Zach Wilson. For whatever reason, they just refuse to bench. They just in game, like the guy would have had to lose a leg, right, in order to come out. But now you've already made that decision. Starting quarterback gets hurt. You've benched your backup. Who the hell cares if you bench Tim Boyle and you have to go back to him the following week? This guy's just lucky to be in the NFL right now, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a different situation than Zach Wilson. That's a really good point, because Zach Wilson was like, he was an early, what is the second overall pick last year. So they have a bit invested in Zach Wilson. They don't have much invested in Tim Boyle. So they might be willing to. It would be a little bit strange for them to make the honestly strange decision to start Tim Boyle and then decide that he's not the answer really quickly.
What do you think it would take? Like, how bad do you think it would have to get? Because look, to be fair, and this is why I think it's also interesting, is look at where the Jets are right now. The Jets are not out of anything. They're 4-6. A win still keeps them in playoff contention. If Robert Saleh, if the coaching staff is like, man, we've practiced Simeon. He didn't get all the reps because of Boyle out there. But how bad do you think it would get in order for Boyle to be out and Simeon to be in?
So I saw Colin post in chat earlier that the interception line for Boyle in this game is 1.5. I think that if he gets over that 1.5 line in the first half, they'd at least be thinking about maybe they try Simeon at that point. Because I do think, like, as you say, like, they do still have stuff to play for. They're probably still trying to win. It seems weird because they've been saying, we're going to start going to our younger guys, which to me is usually an indication of like, all right, we're not trying to win anymore. We just want to see what we have in these young players. But also, they haven't really gotten anything out of Allen Lazard, who, yes, is inactive today. Maybe they just think these guys might actually help them win more than guys like Allen Lazard. Certainly Randall Cobb, who I believe is active today, but I'm not really expecting him to play much. So maybe they're going to the younger guys because they actually think the younger guys give them a better chance of winning. They apparently think that Tim Boyle is their best chance of winning at quarterback this week. I still cannot believe they didn't get another quarterback. But yeah, I think it's pretty unlikely that they switch mid-game, but maybe a couple interceptions in the first half would do it.
I saw his passing prop is a half of a touchdown.
Half a touchdown, 1.5 interceptions. That is wild.
But I would think that he's got a pretty good shot of throwing, even if it's just one, right? If it's Breece Hall, we'll talk a little bit more about Breece, especially in the passing game. But it feels like it would be really hard. It's not like Miami has this stonewall defense that keeps everybody out of the end zone either. I mean, they're not downplaying them by any means, but that's, I don't know, Tim Boyle, it could be even a freak play to Garrett Wilson or something just designed right there. But yeah, that's where he is right now. Over a half touchdown to 1.5 interceptions. What about the other side of this here? Tua is clearly going to be the more popular, or at least the easier to recognize name here. Technically, this is a cold weather game going by those standards in the NFL. And as you know, Neil, Tua has not been fantastic with his splits, his TD to interception ratio here. I don't know if that's enough, if it's leverage or what have you, but do you find yourself today at least getting to a lot of Tua?
Yeah, I'm going to have a ton of Tua. Like clearly the better quarterback in the game. I would guess Tua is going to be in like maybe 3/4 of my lineups or so, across both captain and util. I mean, we do have some stars in this game. Obviously, want to get to a lot of Tyreek Hill. Have to like Jaylen Waddle. Raheem Mostert looks good, but Tua is still, he's the quarterback. He's the only good quarterback on a single game slate. So yeah, Tua is definitely going to be a big part of my lineups. I'm always going to be pairing Tua with at least one pass catcher. I prefer multiple if I have him in the captain spot. But yeah, I'm going to have a ton. And just looking at our single game tool, we actually have positive leverage on Tua in both spots. It's basically neutral in the captain, 11% ownership, 12% chance to be an optimal. But then in the util, we also have him at 47% ownership, 52% chance to be an optimal. So we've got Tua optimal, let's see, 64% of the time. That's, wow, that's quite a bit, especially with some positive leverage. I'm going to get over that 64% number on Tua to try to play a little bit exploitatively if the field's going to be under that number.
Are you a little surprised at that number based on just the quarterbacks in general?
That it's not higher or that it's not lower? I
mean, I guess you could look at it either way, but looking the fact that he at least has positive leverage in this type of game. Like, I would think that more people would be rushing to him and not just countering with, oh, well, it's Tim Boyle.
Yeah, and honestly, I also would not be shocked to see that ownership come in a little bit higher than we have it projected. But he is expensive. Yeah. He's 11,000. He is the second most expensive player on the slate behind Tyreek Hill. And there are some, star players that people are going to want to play in, guys like Garrett Wilson, Jaylen Waddle there as well, Raheem Mostert, Breece Hall. So there are plenty of star pay up options that people are, I think, going to want to get to. So I think he probably comes in. If I had to take, if that were the over under, I would take the over on the 58% ownership we have going to Tua, but I don't think it's going to get like 75%. I think it's, probably a reasonable guesstimate.
You think you'll have more Boyle captain or Tua captain?
Probably. Oh, Tua for sure. Yeah. Ultimately,
just curious. You would shock the world and say, oh, a little more Boyle here.
Well, I mean, so actually, I guess the answer is actually I have the exact same because I set my captain cap at 20%, and I have 20%
Okay.
exactly of each of both Tua and Tim Boyle. Tua clearly the better option, but I do like Tim Boyle as the under-owned option as well. So I actually have 20% of each of them right now.
Nice. Okay. All right. Quarterbacks got them in. Absolutely. I think it's going to be a little easier than normal, especially because of the dynamic with Boyle. That's not really a cloud of intrigue by any means. Kind of know what you're getting there. And same thing as you laid out with Tua. Do you want to start with what team would you like to start with here when you look at the running backs? The reason why I ask is because it's a mess in the sense of you've got Breece Hall and then you've got everybody else that you're trying to kind of figure out here. We should probably just start with the Jets and get Hall out of the way. Not to say that Mostert is going to be neglected by any means, but I imagine that this is going to be a heavy Breece Hall game. It's just hard to think from a game plan standpoint that he's not like the Jets need to run the football, Neil, as much as humanly possible. And Hall can catch the ball as well as anybody coming out of the backfield, take some pressure off Boyle. This should be a monster load for Hall.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, Hall is a priority here. Not the best spot in the world for a running back against this Miami defense. They actually, over the past 5 weeks, Miami is giving up the second fewest schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to running backs. Only Philadelphia better against running backs over the past 5 weeks. Now, I don't think that was the case earlier on in the year. I think that Miami was actually giving up a good amount of, let me actually double check what it is on the year. Yeah, on the year, I guess they're up to they're at fifth now, the fifth least schedule adjusted fantasy points to running backs. But yeah, it's not looking like a great spot for running backs against Miami. They've gotten better throughout the year, so not the best spot. But I think just based on volume, yeah, I still have a lot of interest in Breece Hall, involved both in the running game and in the passing game. Just looking at the most recent game, which they finally traded Michael Carter. They said that they did so because in part they want to get Izzy Abanikanda involved more, and they did. They got him on the field at least a little bit more than he has. I don't even know if he's played prior to that game in the season. I'll look at it, but Breece Hall still in that game. Played 61% of snaps in week 11, had 10 carries, ran routes on 56% of dropbacks, and had 6 targets in that game. So you can expect Breece Hall to continue to be really involved. Promising to see that he got 6 targets in that game with Michael Carter out, because Michael Carter was a little bit of a pass catching back. So nice to see 6 targets in that last game for Breece Hall. I agree with you. I think that it would make sense if they're trying to win games. It would make sense for them to try to keep that Miami offense off the field, slow the game down. They're going to have a better chance to win if they can slow the game down, especially with Tim Boyle at quarterback. So yeah, I'm thinking that the volume is going to be massive for Breece Hall. The real question is Tim Boyle going to provide enough of a threat where Miami is even going to feel like they need to worry about the passing game, or are they just going to load the box and try to stop Breece Hall? I'm not sure what the defensive strategy is going to be, but yeah, I think just based on volume, Breece Hall is going to be a fantastic play. Clearly the top option on the Jets, and we've got him at basically neutral cap and ownership, 11.5% ownership, 11.5% optimal. Looks really good in the util though. You can find some nice positive leverage. 41% ownership going to Breece Hall in the util, 51% chance of being optimal. So looks like a fantastic play wherever you want to play him. And he's only 7,600, so 2,000 cheaper than Jaylen Waddle. That looks really good to me. So yeah, Breece Hall going to be a big part of my lineups as well. One of the best plays on the slate just based on volume. You can obviously, and he's got talent. So not the best situation, but he's got the talent. He's got the volume. Yeah, I like Breece Hall quite a bit. And then, I mean, looking at the other guys on Miami in the backfield, just looking at on the Jets in the backfield, the most recent game. So this is the first game in week 11 without Michael Carter after he was let go. Dalvin Cook was up to a 25% snap share. And yeah, looking at it, Abanikanda, that was his first game that he's actually seen any offensive snaps, at least on the year. Played 10 snaps, 18% snap share in the most recent game. And they've said that they want to get the young guys more involved. It wouldn't really surprise me to see Izzy get actually a little bit more run in this game. Now, I don't know. They said before that game they want to get the young guys more involved, and he only played 10 snaps, so maybe that is kind of what they were shooting for. But it wouldn't be surprising if they ramp him up a little bit more as the season goes on after they finally got him on the field. So Breece Hall definitely have a ton of interest in. My second favorite running back on the Jets is actually going to be Israel Abanikanda, just because I think there's a possibility he's going to get worked in more. And he's only 1,200, so doesn't take that much to pay it off. Dalvin Cook played more snaps in the most recent game. He had a 25% snap share, which was actually his most since week 4. So Dalvin Cook actually saw more run with Michael Carter out as well. But I kind of am at least hopeful and kind of expectant that Izzy is going to play more than Dalvin Cook at some point and maybe take on more of that role. So my ranking of these three would be obviously Breece Hall number 1, but I think I'd rather play Abanikanda over Dalvin Cook, just with the expectation that maybe they get him a little bit more involved. And he's, an electric player. Like he can pay off his salary with just one splash play pretty easily. So some interest there. And I don't think I'm going to Nick Bawden, who got 2 snaps in week 11.
Oh man. I was hoping that you would give my Dalvin Cook anytime TD and Dalvin Cook 2+ TD long shot some nice life in your answer, but I think I need to take that sucker out back. Maybe I could cash out. I mean, but based on usage, but again, how a lot of this changes, right? If I'm betting on Dalvin Cook to score, I'm not taking advantage. There's no salary. There's nothing next to him. So when you look at Izzy versus Cook, you're taking also advantage of the fact that you're paying less for what could be equal productivity, if not even a little bit more to Izzy based on the game flow.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's my expectation. Who knows? Like I'm just, maybe I'm wish casting a little bit that they're going to get Izzy involved more so than Dalvin Cook. It was, for people who are holding Dalvin Cook bags and season long best ball, that kind of stuff, it was promising to see that his snap share came up, and maybe they will continue to give Dalvin Cook more of that role with Michael Carter out. But I'm at least hopeful, just because they said, we want to get the young guys more involved. They specifically mentioned that they wanted to get Abanikanda involved, and then he did. In his first game action, he saw 10 snaps. So I'm hoping that he can, play a little bit more going forward, but I don't know any better than anybody else.
No, I get it. Trust me. I understand, but it makes sense too, where you can take a little bit of advantage with a guy like Izzy with I don't want to use the term unknown, but expectation there, because that can pay off. Now on the other side, let's just look at Mostert and then kind of rank how you were, where you're approaching this backfield, if really anything else. I mean, Mostert has been successful. We know that. It's just, I guess the only concern has always been injury with him.
Yeah, and it's clearly Mostert number 1 in week 11. Mostert played 78% of snaps. That is really awesome. Getting huge workload, 22 carries in week 11, and also ran routes on 42% of dropback. So Mostert far and away is the number 1 for the Dolphins. We don't have Salvon Ahmed in this game. He's out with an injury, I believe, right? And I know that he's out. I don't remember what the reason is, but yeah, no Ahmed in this game. No Devin Eytan, obviously, in this game either.
Yep.
So I think that also provides a little bit more opportunity for Jeff Wilson to maybe finally get involved a little bit. So as far as the Dolphins go, yeah, Mostert, if you can fit him in, he's clearly the number 1 option. 78% snap share is pretty awesome from the last game. And then I think the only other Dolphins running back that I'm planning on playing is Jeff Wilson. He's only 1,800. Maybe he takes on, how many snaps did Eytan even play? Eytan played 3 snaps last week. So maybe he gets those 3 from Eytan. Maybe he picks up some of the Ingold is available, but the Salvon Ahmed played 20 snaps in that last game as well. My expectation is that Jeff Wilson is going to step in. He didn't play a single snap in week 11. I don't remember if maybe he was inactive for that one. Alec Ingold did play 34 snaps. He had 50% snap share in that game. And actually, maybe I do need to play a little bit of Alec. He saw 4 targets in week 11. So that is kind of interesting. To see 4 targets to a guy like Alec Ingold. Doesn't project particularly well, but at 3% ownership, I guess you have to at least consider him as well. So it would be Mostert for me number 1, Jeff Wilson number 2, and then Alec Ingold as a large field dart throw. I think is fine after seeing some targets in the last game and plenty of snaps.
Yeah, I wonder where Wilson lies as far as targets are concerned too, right? As somebody who may be able to jump in there.
So on the year, let me
now again, this is also going to be
Jeff Wilson has played He's played 3 games on the year. He's only actually played 35 snaps across 3 games. So that is obviously not great. He's run routes on 17% of dropbacks in those games, which is a fine number, and 7 targets in 3 games. So certainly a little bit involved in the passing game. Just he needs to be on the field, and he hasn't really been on the field that much. So maybe as he gets on the field a little bit more, he'll see a few targets there as well. Honestly, before I looked at that, I was not planning on playing Alec Ingold, and then I look at week 11, and it's kind of hard not to notice 50% snap share and 4 targets. Like, I don't think of Alec Ingold as being like very involved in the offense, but 4 targets is really promising.
Yeah, you're right. You can't ignore that by any means, especially when you're looking at just such a low cost player.
On the season, he only has 10 for the record. He's played 10 games, and Alec Ingold has 10 targets. So I don't know. Maybe I don't know if that's he's trending upward or just like that was an outlier.
Yeah, I don't know. If he's trending upwards, you're getting in now ahead of time, right?
Right, exactly. So that's why at 3% ownership, I think he's fine as like a flyer. Not something that I have high expectations for, but yeah, as a flyer, looks pretty good.
All right, here we go. Thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already. I see new people popping in here, so we want to make sure that you're part of this massive DFS community. We're over 100K on the Odd Shopper channel, so come hang over there. Don't worry, you get to see all the same people here. So it's not just me like putting out videos over there. Well, I'm not going to go over there if it's just this guy. Trust me, it's other people.
No. What are you talking about?
You're more familiar.
Right? You're a star. Absolutely. People should go to see your content because you put out a lot of good content, a lot of winning content for people on Odd Shopper.
There's a difference, Neil. There's a difference between good content and winning content.
Well, you put out both. Right? You put out both.
Not. You should see the Thanksgiving parlay video. It was a massacre.
Oh, was it?
to come with 3, and the beauty of it was just this level of confidence that probably spilled into arrogance and just being dismissive. And of course, it just was like 1x after another. But look, it happens.
It happens to all of us.
We did mention a bunch on DK, and I did see this Boss Bruh favorite FanDuel GPP captain for you, Neil. And if it's somebody we haven't talked about, it's fine. It's live before lock. We'll take anybody's questions about anything right now.
Yeah, so let's see. We have
Mostert's definitely playing hurt, Sean, right?
Yeah, Mostert, he's active at least, so I would assume he's playing since he's active. Tua is our highest optimal captain. He's the optimal captain more than anybody else, 16% of the time, and we've got him at 14% ownership. So you could just go to the somewhat chalk Tua because we do have actually some nice positive leverage there. Tyreek Hill is number 2 in terms of optimal odds, but he has negative leverage, 17% ownership, 15% chance of being optimal. So to me, my favorite would probably come down to either Tua or Jaylen Waddle, who we have at 11% captain ownership, 13% chance of being optimal. Those two kind of stand out as some positive leverage in the tools, if nothing else. Otherwise, honestly, you could go to somebody like Jason Sanders if you want to build for a low scoring game. Like that's the only way the kicker is going to be the highest scoring player in your lineup is if there's not many touchdowns. But we have Jason Sanders, 3% ownership, or 3.2% ownership, 6.6% chance of being optimal. I'll get more specific using these low numbers. So more than double his ownership is his odds of being optimal. So that is really promising. But always keep in mind on FanDuel, because there is no salary multiplier in the captain spot, you need that player to be your highest scoring player. So you have to build for it. If you're putting Jason Sanders in there, think about that as you're building your lineups. What needs to happen for Jason Sanders, the Dolphins kicker, to be the highest scoring player in this lineup? But we do have some nice positive leverage there, so you just need to build accordingly.
All right, let's hit the wide receivers here, and we'll remind you as well that we have this insane Black Friday deal. You're getting 50% off your first payment with any stochastic premium tool. So the Sims are amazing. I'm using them out there. If I'm using them and posting wins on Twitter, then anybody can backdoor their way into victory here. It's that easy. Like, well, you have to be Neil and you have to put all this money in with Greg. And no. A, I'm not Neil, and B, I don't have Greg's bankroll. So if I'm able to get in on dollar entries and 50-cent entries and just use the Sims and post victories, then you are out there as well. So again, take advantage of, you shop around for deals for cereal, for your kids' shoes, for cars, right? Why wouldn't you do this for here as well? And we're giving you something half off. By the way, I saw somebody say that your beard should be checked for PEDs. you have a massive, like, how often does that get shaved or trimmed? I should say trimmed.
Not often enough, to be honest with you. And this is, I've grown it out a little bit longer than I usually do recently. I just we had Thanksgiving yesterday at my parents' house, and my mom was telling me that I need to shave it. I probably will. I'll probably trim it at some point. Most recently, I've just kind of been trimming this, and I trim this maybe once a week. Yeah, not often enough.
Okay. I was curious because that thing is a beast. Like, here I am thinking, man, I got to shave. My wife called me out, and same thing. I was at the in-laws, and people are just like, you go on TV with that? And I'm just like, well, I don't know. At some point, I'm going to have to trim it down. And I saw yours, and yours is definitely like, you've got a beast of a beard, man. Now, we both have the grays coming in, but that's just,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Once you add human beings, I've noticed this. There's a direct proportion to the increase of gray hair, face, or wherever else it is on your body, to the amount of people you bring into your life, right? Like significant other, marriage, starts to come. Child starts to come. Second child, you're lucky if you have any hair left.
I don't have any. You just had another child recently, didn't you? Was that number 2?
I tried to warn Laufey. That's all I'm going to say. I tried to warn him.
Yeah.
People, you'll never sleep again. No. And you think about that, like, it's true. It's true. It absolutely is true. All right, my friend, Tyreek Hill. Apparently, though, playing a little banged up. So might be some concern here. We just talked about Tua and how much you are getting to him throughout. A lot of it has to do with Tua. A lot of it has to do with the quarterback matchup here. Look, I don't care if Tyreek Hill's out there with one hand at this point and a club for another. The ability to space, the ability to get downfield. Yes, Sauce and the Jets are probably going to have a game plan to start with, but everybody has a game plan at first. Doesn't mean that Tyreek's going to drop 3 TDs and go for 300, but I imagine you're going to get to a lot of Tyreek Hill today.
Yeah, I mean, Tyreek Hill is probably the player I'm going to get to either the most or the second most, with Tua right there with him. Hard not to love Tyreek Hill. He gets it done so consistently. It is true. Like, this is a really tough matchup for Tyreek Hill. I will note we do actually have, I'm on FanDuel. We've got a little bit of negative leverage. On DraftKings, we actually have slight positive leverage overall. Looks better in the util, which I think is just a function of he's 12,400. So pretty expensive to play in the captain spot. We have slight negative leverage there, 18% ownership, but still 16% chance of being the optimal captain. And we do have some paid on options, so you can certainly fit him. We have him at 50% usual ownership, 55% chance of being optimal. Yeah, Tyreek Hill is he's a beast. He's one of the best fantasy players in the game, one of the best receivers in the game, in real football as well. So hard not to love Tyreek Hill. The only downside is, this is a really tough matchup. The Jet secondary is really it's tough. It's tough to beat the Jet secondary. So even for a guy like Tyreek Hill, not easy. But can anybody cover Tyreek Hill? I'm not sure. I'm not sure that Sauce Gardner can do it. We'll find out.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what they do initially, right? Like, I'm curious if it's just a matter of, not to say that he's going to be on an island, but to give Sauce as limited amount of help as possible and wait for him to kind of get burned to then adjust, because that could work 2 ways. But I mean, it really could work 2 ways, where Tyreek just breaks that open and takes advantage of that, like he would with most people, because it's Tyreek Hill. The other part of it would be, it actually works for a little bit, and it's like, you can't stop Tyreek today, but maybe you can contain him enough to where all of a sudden his productivity doesn't necessarily match the cost. I don't think based on what you're thinking as well, that it's worth a risk of staying away from Tyreek Hill more often than not. Like, you kind of have to take that risk anyway, but I am kind of curious to see what they do initially on Hill today.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're going to try to do whatever they can to stop him. I think that you said it exactly right. They can't stop him. Maybe they can limit him. And if they limited him, given his price tag, like if he has 6 for 80 and no touchdown, that's, that's not stopping him, but that might be enough to stop him from being in the optimal lineup. So, as we look at our tools, we see that although we have Tyreek Hill in the optimal about 70% of the time, that means he's not in there 30% of the time. So I'm not going to have him in every lineup, but he is going to be a big part of my lineups just because he's got the talent, he's got the opportunity. We don't have like nobody. There aren't many players in this spot who in this game who are actually in a great spot. Like it's a tough matchup for both sides. So he's got it's a tough spot for him, but it's a tough spot for basically everybody in the game. So I'll take my shots on Tyreek Hill.
So I don't know, who are you? So the problem that you have with the Jets guys, and Garrett Wilson, of course, right at the top. We'll talk about him and Conklin coming up in a second, but Jaylen Waddle just feels like has potential today to have a big game, right? The focus is going to be a lot. Not to say that he's not going to see his share of sauce either, but I'm just saying it feels like this could be a potentially big game. The second option, as opposed to a good Jets defense, at least against the pass, versus what has been throughout the year against the run. Jaylen Waddle seems like he could have an opportunity, especially big on Tua. It's hard to think that it's all falling on Hill's hands. So I don't know. I don't know if you feel the same about Waddle, with at least the potential, the opportunity to be there. And if so, kind of how you're working it.
Yeah, so I think it really comes down to how they play. Because I mean, they also have DJ Reed. They have two of the best cornerbacks in the NFL in the same secondary here. So it's not like it's an easy spot. If they want to shadow both of them, they certainly could. Hard to know exactly how they're going to game plan, if they are going to try to force it to Waddle by shadowing Hill, doubling Hill, whatever. Hard to know exactly how they're going to play it. But yeah, I think Waddle similar. I mean, he's sort of like a lesser version of Hill. He's got the super speed, he's got the super talent. Have to love Waddle, and he's also coming in at lower ownership and nearly 3,000 cheaper than Hill. So yeah, Waddle definitely going to be a big part of my lineups as well. We've got him. Also, we've got some positive leverage there. 10% captain ownership, 9% chance being optimal in the captain, but then 38% util ownership, 42% chance being optimal. So in the util in particular, Waddle, you've got some nice positive leverage there. You can just hope that one of these guys with the super speed on the Dolphins, and they've got Waddle, they've got Hill, they've got Mostert, all super fast. Hope that one of them can just break one off on a busted play or something. So yeah, I'm going to be taking plenty of shots on Waddle. I'm going to have more Hill than Waddle just because Hill has been clearly the guy this year. He's been so good. But still, I'm going to have Waddle in more than half my lineups.
All right. So just again, because this has popped up a couple of times in the chat, you talked about it as far as Jeff Wilson projecting well without Eytan. It's something you mentioned as far as at least your second back. So I saw a couple of people asking about that. I think there may be concern. Maybe there is concern, Neil, about just Mostert's health, or if it's just a matter of people think Miami is going to blow him out and that you don't need to necessarily run Mostert 78, 79% of the snaps. But it's an interest. Here's another reason, too. And I just saw this again on the chat, Toma bringing up relative information here, which is it's 45 degrees, right? It's 50 here in Philadelphia. It's going to be 5 or so degrees, a little bit cooler northeast of me up at MetLife. So what's that game script play out? The Dolphins, it's not a higher scoring game. The Dolphins are probably not just going 3 and out every time. They are moving the football, but it's going to be mostly on the ground. Mostert's hurt. It could open up if it's Izzy or Wilson. As you talked about earlier, like this could definitely open something up. That's why I just wanted to bring it back for new people coming in, because it seemed like a kind of relevant conversation there.
Yeah, I mean, I think Wilson and Izzy are kind of similar plays to me in that both of them are cheap. I think both of them, in large part because of their price tags, have some standalone value. Like they could get it done in a regular game script. I think they're going to see enough snaps, enough touches that they could pay off their salary with like a touchdown, a long play, something like that. But both Wilson and Abanikanda also have some great contingent value just because, yeah, in a blowout, I would expect Jeff Wilson to come in, get more carries in a blowout, certainly a possibility. Similar with Izzy, I think that he would get more run in a blowout. So there is both, standalone and contingent value for both these guys. Love the price tag on both of them. Jeff Wilson at 1,800, probably the more likely to see that contingent upside in a blowout. But then Abanikanda also at 1,200 and at just 6% ownership. So kind of love both of these guys, just as they're not going to hit all that often, but I think that they're going to hit more often than people are going to play them. And also because they're so cheap, it's really hard for them to fully fail. Like what do you need to be really like, oh, I shouldn't have played Jeff Wilson? You need him to put 2, 3 or fewer fantasy points to really hurt you. Whereas I think the upside is a lot greater than the downside in playing these guys, because I think it's unlikely that either of them puts up a total 0.
How much do you see yourself getting to said Wilson, or I guess even Braxton Berrios at this point? Anything deeper than the top two guys in the Miami wideouts?
Yeah, of the Miami wideout, Cedric Wilson would be number 3 for me. So I think that I like Jeff Wilson better than any of the Miami wideouts beyond Waddle and Hill. Cedric Wilson played 49% ran routes on 49% of dropbacks in week 11. So that's kind of promising. Saw 4 targets in week 11. So he has the third most opportunity of these wide receivers. Craycraft was down at just 22% route participation in week 11, so less than half of the routes that Cedric Wilson ran. He's basically just a touchdown or bust kind of play here. Certainly you could go there. It's a showdown slate. He's viable. 150 set, I would probably be over the field there, but I'm only playing 25 lineups. I think the only wide receivers I'm getting to here are going to be Waddle, Hill, and Cedric Wilson. I guess Robbie Chosen ran 4 routes in the last game. Maybe those go to Craycraft and it gets up to 13, but I think I'd rather take my shots on Cedric Wilson there.
There you go. For all you Chosen truthers out there, we don't even have them projected to breathe this game, so I think you're okay. There.
Oh, and I guess Braxton Berrios didn't play.
That's what I'm saying. Berrios, you can sneak him in there. Yeah.
So it's in his most recent game. Oh, now I have to. Did Berrios get hurt? Now I'm forgetting whether he got hurt in the middle of the game, because so in week 8, his most recent games, week 8, Berrios played 53% of snaps, where Cedric Wilson played 30%, and then week 9, Cedric Wilson played 65%. Berrios played 27%. So that's actually something I need to look at. Did he get hurt in game that week? Let's see. Hamstring injury, so maybe.
Boy, he did his best work in that blowout loss against Buffalo.
Yeah.
Maybe that's, maybe it takes New York just destroying Miami today. That would be the ultra contrarian play. Tim Boyle leading a 28-10 scoring drive there at the end of it. Berrios getting some work. I mean, I don't know. It's very small and limited opportunity. I just wanted to bring him up more so in case we didn't bypass any of these two guys.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out if he was injured in game, and that's the reason that Cedric Wilson played more than him in the last game. Then maybe I would actually put Berrios ahead of Cedric Wilson. I'm moving River Craycraft down to I'm not playing him. In a 150 set, I'd probably play a little bit, but now I'm debating between Braxton Berrios and Cedric Wilson as the guy who's likely to get to run the third most routes.
Welcome to Jets Dolphins on Black Friday, Neil.
Yeah, it's a tough one. It's between those two. I don't know that I have a great answer here. Let's see. Yeah, I can't find anything on whether he was hurt mid-game. Actually, let me look up I'm going to look up whether he played in the fourth quarter. It might not even
matter. You realize that, right? From a productivity.
I mean, yeah, that's the thing. Like on any other slate, it would not matter. This is the kind of thing that just on a showdown slate, it's at least it's a place that you can find potentially a little bit of edge. So what was that game was week 9. So let me look up the quarter, the snaps by quarter in week 9 for the Dolphins. That's what I'm looking up here. That's how in depth we're going on our.
You do me a favor, look.
Yeah,
you look that up. All right, let's tell everybody what's going on with Owner's Box, and you just hold on to that gem, hold on to that nugget for all of us in a second here. But as you've been, I'm sure told by anybody who's doing a show here on the Stochastic channel, Owner's Box is where you need to be. It's a place where you can win. It's a place where you can get by, and definitely it's easier than these mass spots that have a ton of people thrown in there. These are going to be the areas where you can win, and we're going to match your first deposit, minimum $10. That's fine. You'll be eligible to earn a bonus amount equal to the amount deposited. So again, it's on you. We don't have to force you into buy. Yeah, you put in $10, you're gonna get this back. It's whatever you want to put in. You put in $250, you'll get a $250 match. Simple as that. Maximum's up to $500. So don't think that you can go crazy here, drop Orfield money into this thing right away. You got to slowly ease your way into it. You're going to get site credit in the form of Owner's Bucks, pardon me, on Owner's Box. So you have to be 18 or older, as you know. See everything. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Legal age is 21 in most states, but states like Kentucky are awesome because you only have to be 18 to jump in there. But it's like we've got projections on here on Stochastic, so we're gonna help you. We're not just gonna pump and dump. right? Like pump you into a site and then dump you, leave you to fend for yourself. We got projections. We got all different ways in which you can win and beat the field at Owner's Box. And I know a lot of you guys, because I just try to hone as much information as I can from Slack and all, just working with y'all. But a lot of you guys love this because it's such a break, if you will, from like a DK or a FanDuel type scenario where you guys could just come in here and just game and win some money. So we want everybody to be involved in Owner's Box. That's all.
That's right. Take advantage. All right.
Did you find that?
I did. So I'm looking at the info. So Barris played all 4 quarters in that game. So it's possible that he tweaked it a little bit and tried to play on it. But it looks like Cedric Wilson in week 9, in the most recent game that Barrios was active, played ahead of him slightly. So like in the first quarter, we had Barrios ran more routes than first quarter, he only ran 1 route in that game, 7 in the second quarter, whereas Cedric Wilson ran 8 routes. Third quarter, Barrios ran 2, Cedric Wilson ran 7. So I think that Wilson was playing ahead of Barrios without prior to any injury concern in that week 9 game. So I think I'm still ranking Wilson ahead of Braxton Berrios for this game.
Is there anybody other than Garrett Wilson? I mean, you kind of have to just hope that Tim Boyle doesn't screw himself in this game, because if he does, forget Garrett Wilson. We'll talk about Conklin too in that spot at the tight end. But I mean, anybody. Why don't we just put the rest of the Jets together? All right. We only got 13 minutes or so anyway. We should talk leftovers and turkey dinner and all the other stuff. Happy Thanksgiving. We didn't even mention that. I was so geeked up to work with Neil. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there. What do you do? Just throw everybody who is eligible right now. We already talked about Breece, Neil, but throw every single. Sorry, Jacob. I know I'm throwing you for a loop here too, because you did all the hard work of putting the left line down there. So we're supposed to go from wideouts to tight ends, but just throw this pile of shit together and just look at the trust factor that you need to have with Tim Boyle in order to really justify getting to maybe anybody other than Garrett Wilson, including Tyler Conklin.
Yeah, so Garrett Wilson, as you say, is the clear number 1. Just looking at the most recent game, because I think the most recent game is the most telling in what they want to do, because that was prior to week 11. They said we want to get the young guys more involved, and they started to do that a little bit in week 11. Still, Garrett Wilson ran 87% of routes. He had the most routes, 8 targets in that game, 27% target share. So Garrett Wilson, far and away the number 1 for the Jets. Looks like I would say Xavier Gipson is the number 2. He played 85% of routes in week 11, only had 2 targets, so he was not the second most targeted, but I think that I put a little bit more weight into the routes run. I think that I would rank Xavier Gipson as the wide receiver 2 for the Jets. Now we have Alan Lazardo. Honestly, I was disappointed because I was going to play it this way anyway, that they're going to continue to get the young guys more involved. So, but now everybody's going to play it that way. I think after Wilson and Gibson, it's probably Brownlee, number 3. Jason Brownlee ran routes on 33% of dropbacks. Sorry, you want me to put everybody here together. So let me
everybody together.
That. Wilson, Gibson are my top 2 here. Conklin would be number 3 of the pass catchers for me. In week 11, 56% route participation. He had 3 targets in that game as well. I think Conklin is the number 3. I do have some interest in Jeremy Ruckert. I think that CJ Uzama has kind of fallen out of favor a little bit. Jeremy Ruckert ran routes on 33%. Actually, it was the same for both Ruckert and Brownlee. Both ran routes on a third of dropbacks in week 11. I think both are in play, but Ruckert actually saw 4 targets in that game, which I think is kind of promising that he, finally starts to play and immediately sees 4 targets on the season. Though he has just 10. So again, it's one of those, like, is this a trend? Is this an outlier? I'm not entirely sure, but I think it's at least promising that he ran more routes than he has been playing. So yeah, to me, it's Wilson, Gibson, Conklin, and then it's really Ruckert or Brownlee to me are next in line. Let me see if there's anybody else that I have any interest in playing for the Jets. Cobb is active. He's not going to be owned at all. So I guess you could take your shots on Cobb if you really want to. I don't think I'm going there because they've said they want to play the younger guys. Cobb had been healthy and active for a month. So I'm not really expecting him to be out there all that much, but you could take your shots there because who knows? Maybe he's active. Maybe they plan to play him. And then Irvin Charles. I think that I would probably play Irvin Charles before Randall Cobb. Now he's I think 26 years old. I looked it up. I was like, how old is this guy? He did not run a route in week 11. I think he played some snaps. What did he play? I'm on the, I think he played very minimal snaps, but it's at least possible. He's an inexperienced guy. Yeah, he played 0 snaps last week. He had played 4 snaps in each of week 9 and 10. He's large field. Like if you're MME, you can consider Irvin Charles, but otherwise probably not someone you're too interested in. So just to reiterate, it is going to be obviously it's going to be Garrett Wilson number 1, Xavier Gipson number 2, Conklin number 3, and then it would be Ruckert or Jason Brownlee for me.
Yeah, and just to back your point there too, especially about Gibson and to a little bit lesser of extent. And by the way, if you're still here, we got about 8 minutes or so. Hit that thumbs up button, please, and make sure that you're part of this whole thing and you subscribe. We're doing a lot of work here for Jets Dolphins and what could be one of the uglier games of the entire season, but we don't treat it that way, right? You're out there trying to win some money. We're going to honor it the same. But something that Colin and then Jason reiterated on the chat, backup quarterbacks like this love throwing to the guys they're comfortable with. Boyle's been throwing to Ruckert, Gibson in practice all year. I think it's situational, but these guys nailed it. And you've got a first week. Like if we're 3 weeks into Tim Boyle starting and he's now been practicing first team reps for 3 weeks and he's been throwing to Garrett Wilson more so, I would not necessarily look at it that much, but this first week, I think you've got an edge there where they're absolutely a guy who's probably just going to be surviving out there when Gibson's on the field, Ruckert to an extent too. Absolutely. These are going to be sneaky guys to target. Also from a betting standpoint, if you want to head over to OddsShopper, I imagine you're going to find some really favorable spots for both of those two guys. You don't feel as bad as you thought you would going through the Jets receivers and tight ends, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. There's, you gotta play somebody, right? It's a single game slate.
That's right. Kickers, D. Let's look at this. Again, I think the Jet of all of the, we'll talk about the kickers specifically in a second. And also, by the way, before you get out of here, you got to hit us. And on chat, please do as well. Before you get out of here, you have to hit us with your go-to leftover. So what is the first thing you go to? And you need a day. I'm not talking about third meal or fourth meal. This is not 11 o'clock at night after you ate at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I mean, give it a day, right? You sleep and then wake up. What's your go-to leftover? The first thing you pull out of the fridge to eat. All right. Think about that one.
I mean, it's definitely not. Turkey is dry enough on the day of.
Yeah.
I'm not going turkey leftovers, just extra dry. Probably mashed potatoes. Like mashed potatoes just reheat really well. Mashed potatoes and gravy. That's probably the only real, and desserts. So it's going to be mashed potatoes and gravy for me, and probably desserts. The only other thing that I'm really interested in leftovers the next day. How about you?
Wow, Yeti D, ribeye. Y'all are doing ribeye.
If I had ribeye at Thanksgiving, that would be my answer too. But we don't.
Wait a second. That's life changing here. I think we're going to try ribeye next year for Thanksgiving. Yeah, ribeye goes with all the sides, Neil. Ribeye goes with mash, with stuffing, with green bean casserole. Oh my God. It is stuffing for me, right? It's always going to be because I feel like stuffing I could eat cold. I feel like I can put like, you want a little life hack. Cold stuffing with cold ranch on it. You're welcome. That's all I'm going to say.
Really?
All right.
That is not something I've ever had. That's interesting.
If you smoke weed or do edibles, try that ahead of time. It'll make it taste even better. The Jets defense seems to be the most, like the Dolphins defense seems to be an obvious play, right? Because you've got this Tim Boyle scenario here with the Jets. How intrigued are you with the Jets defense? And then we can look at these kickers before we get out, because I feel like the Jets, this cold weather, whatever you wanted to get to that point, this could be a game in which it might take a little bit for this Dolphins off, or even a couple of turnovers, Tua throwing a pick in the 45-degree, what have you. Any interest in the Jets?
Yeah, a ton of. I don't know that I've ever seen a defense projected as well as. Oh, sorry, you're talking about the Jets. I was answering for the Dolphins. But yeah,
no. Go ahead.
All right. So the Dolphins are projected for 11.3 fantasy points. I don't know that I've ever seen a projection that high on a defense before. That is pretty incredible. But actually the Jets I have interest in as well, just because they are such a great defense, and you need to play somebody from the Jets, and playing the Jets defense, like if they get a pick six, they might not do anything on offense. So I actually love both of the defenses in this game. I think that it's a fantastic spot for both of them. And then as far as kickers go, like obviously like the Dolphins offense is so good and the Jets defense is so good that it's possible that they just end up in the red zone, but then forced to kick field goals pretty frequently. So yeah, I love both defenses. I love Jason Sanders. Greg Zuerlein, I'm probably not going to play a ton of, but he's a kicker. You can on a one game slate. He's obviously going to project pretty well point per dollar. And as I said, you need to play somebody. Weird things happen. Maybe he ends up being optimal. So yeah, kickers and defense I think are kind of important in this game. More so the defenses for me, but I do have some interest in Jason Sanders as well.
How many, just ballpark, what percentage lineups do you anticipate having both defenses, both kickers?
I don't know that I'm going to have any. I'll probably have 0.
Yeah, but at least why I ask in a game like this with such a contrary, like that would be, I don't even think it would be like the ultimate contrarian scenario. Those 4 might be good enough in the first half in order to justify being, but I was, what about 3? What about 3 of the 4?
I would guess I'll have a handful that have 3 of the 4.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Just curious. Anything else?
Question. It was a good question. I feel like we've covered
I'm really tempted. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're tempted by what? Tell me about it.
Well, pecan pie for breakfast, by the way, Dub K123.
Yes.
That is a massive victory by all means. So I'm kind of tempted right now to bet. Well, you talked about, I think it was Gibson. I'm kind of tempted to bet Gibson to score a touchdown. You've kind of talked me into that.
It's just a matter of, are they going to score any touchdowns in this game is the question you need to be asking yourself. And if they are, I think Gibson is, one of the top 3 or 4 options there.
Probably get some pretty good odds on him too. So that's why, I'm already locked into Dalvin Cook, which you hate. So I don't know what else to do.
I don't hate him as a bet for 1 touchdown. It's just for DFS. I think that he needs more than a touchdown to pay off his salary. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe a touchdown would be enough. But yeah, I'm not playing a ton of Cook for DFS.
By the way, Jacob, you talk about this is a stone man's play right here too. All right, so don't just blame me for the ranch on the stuffing, but Jacob Roach, our producer, of course, got to grab a tortilla shell, throw it on the skillet, go turkey, mashed taters, and mac and cheese in it, then dip it in leftover cranberry sauce. Now that tastes. I'm anti-cranberry, and I can even admit that tastes amazing.
I'm anti-cranberry by itself, but cranberry like in a sandwich or in like that does sound like the way to eat cranberries is in that kind of a setup. So I don't hate that idea.
Anything you want to get out before we get out of here?
No, I think we're good.
I think so too. Oh, this is fun, man. Can't Lofty have a kid more often?
He really should. Or at least, he's only taken like a week of paternity leave.
Well, that's going to change.
At least give you a little bit more time.
Well, here's the thing. That's going to change. Let's put a bet down there. All right. He's out for a week. The over-under for paternity leave for Dave Lougherin right now, Lofty _D, is 7.5 days. I think he comes back to our CEO, Tom, and anybody else that he answers to, which he'll tell you is nobody because Lofty runs this company. But I guarantee you that he comes back 5 days into having a second child saying, oh, Tom, I'm going to need some more time, man.
Yeah, he might. I mean, he's had 1 kid before. He basically told me like, well, it's not like I'm working from home. So like, it's not like a big deal for me to, go do a show for an hour.
No. It's completely different, Neil, everything, because here's the thing. You were able to focus both people's attention on a toddler. Now his wife has to be the hero for the newborn. And I don't care if she's got a cape and superpowers to be able to deal with a newborn and a toddler. It's just like Lofty's going to have to do a lot more with the toddler. Now he's got a girl. I've got a boy. So maybe that's the difference, but I tried to warn him. That's all I'm going to say, man.
Yeah. And Eytan, just what, 2 or 3 months ago, you had your second kid. So you're in the thick of it right now. 5 weeks ago. Was it just 5 weeks ago?
Yes.
Man, okay.
5 weeks ago.
So Eytan is in the thick of it. He knows what he's talking about here.
See, look at this. Woody Hacker, Eytan's 100%. Ryan Stubbs, I'm so glad my kids are older. All right. You think that I'm just miserable out here? You think I'm just a curmudgeon? Woody Hacker, I should have stopped at 2. I'm telling you. Neil, this is a warning. You are looking into the future right now. Stop. Turn around. Make different decisions.
Don't worry about me. I'm not having any. So
I love you, man. Thank you. At Player Q DFS for Neil Orfield. Make sure you thank him on Twitter for winning you some money today. Thank to Jacob, of course. Make sure you thank Jacob Roach here on the chat. I'm Eytan. You'll see me, I'm sure. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving. Neil, take it away. Anything you want to say? We're out of here.
Yeah, let's win some money. Thanks for hanging out with us, and good luck today.